Hello and welcome once again to yet another edition of the Red Groove Revolution podcast, episode 17 of the program. I'm your host, Earl Holder, aka DJ Solero, and I'm here with my special guest, record collector, and arguably better known for being one of the top dealers that attended the legendary Roosevelt Record Hotel conventions of the mid to late 90s, Boston Bob Gibson, of course, not to be confused with the famous pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, but Mr. Bob Gibson of a different sort, the legendary record collector. Mr. Gibson, thank you for availing time out of your busy schedule to come on the program. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. Anytime, anytime. So I guess for starters, Mr. Gibson, who or what inspired you to become a record collector?
So I guess I after high school, I guess I started listening to a lot of music on the radio, um, getting into different genres. I got a job at a record store when I moved to Boston and just started. When I was younger, I collected things like comic books or baseball cards, things like that. I guess I had the collector gene, but the cool thing about records was like a comic book, you'd read it once and then you'd put it, you were done. But music you could listen to over and over again. Um, so yeah, it was just um, after, just I guess, yeah, sorry, I'm mumbling here, but just the love of music, I guess, and the access of working at a record store allowed me to just listen to so many different things, so and it was easy, I got a discount or there were a lot of record stores in Boston, so I could roam around and find things. So
Okay, okay. And what was your experience during the Roosevelt Hotel record conventions of the 90s?
so I missed the very first one, but I started going on the second one, and it was on a what I would do is stay up all night the night before, like organize my records. I had about 4 crates that were full. Almost always I would sell like half of them, go around, buy a bunch of stuff, maybe fill up a half a crate, and then walk out with some good records and, some cash. Um, I My experience there was just how hectic and loud and surreal it was. Like everybody, like there were 40, 50 dealers. Everybody had a turntable and an amp and a speaker. And so everybody was playing records all at the same time. So you heard all these bits of different things all going. Um, at the end of the room was Lenny Roberts, had a big setup, and he had the loudest system. So, you could hear him over everything else. But um, then there were just dealers going around, like everybody was like moving fast, going through stuff. Producers, trying to keep everything like on the down low, so other people wouldn't see what they were buying at that time. Um, and I wish my biggest regret was that I didn't bring cameras or video recorders and just document some of the stuff that was going on there, just the whole environment. Like,
Well, what are some of the records it's been said that you've been responsible for exposing to the hip hop crowd?
um, I was thinking about that before, coming on, and it's like I don't remember some specific things. Like, I know there were things like maybe Hell's Bells, or there was an Art Reynolds break. I used to go through a lot of weird rock records and find drum breaks, and I don't remember the specific titles, but I would always bring stuff down. So I don't know if I guess um, there was the remix, the Nas remix that Large Professor did, that he referenced me as providing that record, the Blue Jays, but I don't remember like the specifics of something, that was like a big record that everybody had to have, They're probably the people that bought them would remember, more exactly. It's been a while, I guess. So, um, I would always try to bring new stuff to every show that I hadn't brought before, or people would give me lists, they're looking for this or that. So I would try to find stuff for them.
It's so weird that you would mention the Nas track, the "It Ain't Hard to Tell" remix, because that was going to segue into my next question. I was going to ask you, is it true that hip hop producer Large Professor created Nas's "It Ain't Hard to Tell" remix the same day you sold him the original record that it was used for, which was, as you mentioned just now, the Blue Jays 1970 album, Nascence, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken?
So yeah, I'm not sure what I also used to do aside from going to the show. I used to, and sell records at the show. I would mail boxes of records to people. So there were several producers that I would put a box together, send it out to them. They would go through it, pick out what they wanted, send back what they didn't want, and pay me for the stuff that they kept. And apparently that was in one of the boxes that I sent to him. So, I guess yeah, that's how that worked out.
I also remember reading somewhere that rapper Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest, he had mentioned that you were the first to discover the Archie Whitewater album, and you brought that to the Roosevelt record conventions.
That could be true. Like I don't remember. Did bring that to. I probably sold him a copy at the show, so I don't know if anyone else had brought it before or not. But maybe that's when he was first exposed, or the people he knew weren't aware of it. But yeah, like I said, it's really, I don't know. I would just bring stuff, and I would mark it like with tracks that were I thought were, you know, either grooves or breaks or beats, and people would listen to them, or so maybe that could be true.
Well, which other records do you recall bringing to the Roosevelt Record Convention of the '90s?
Um, let's see. I started trading with British guys at the time, so I was bringing stuff from Europe. After a while, let me try to think. Maybe like the Stark Reality record a couple of times. Let's see.
Who were from Boston, coincidentally.
Yeah, there was like a local TV station, public TV station, and they produced the album there. Um, but yeah, that was one, and yeah, I wish I had more specifics, but like probably a lot of the sort of psychedelic rock stuff, that because the store I worked at, there was a lot of that stuff there, so I was going through it. Um, there was a record store in town that had a lot of um, jazz focus, and the one of the owners of that record store was they were more into like the 50s kind of jazz, so like they would price things like Roy Ayers records, all the 70s Blue Note stuff. Like at that time in the 90s, like it would be like $6 or $8 or something. So, and then you'd bring up, a bunch of these, and the guy would go, "Oh, you're buying all this crappy records, like this isn't really good jazz. This is the crappy stuff. You know what? I'm even going to make it cheaper because I think this stuff sucks so much." So that was a good thing, like you take a little abuse, but you get a really great deal. So,
And who were some of your like well-known customers?
um, so like at the record show, there were a lot of like the producers of the time, I guess, were like you said, Q-Tip, Large Professor, Pete Rock, um, Showbiz, Buck Wild, Lord Finesse. I think Juju would come by. VIC. Let's see. Yeah, I think there were. Those are the name. Diamond D. There were other. Yeah, those are the main names that pop into my mind at this moment.
Okay, okay.
Oh, T Ray too. Like was another person that. Yeah, you were asked. You mentioned John Carraro before. Like, have you talked to T Ray about him?
Not yet.
He's someone you should, if you're interested in the
Yeah.
John Carraro. Like T Ray is a good person to talk to because he told me that John inherited this big jazz collection. His dad passed away, and he was a big jazz collector. And then Todd like went there and somehow he connected with him and he like would go through all the records and tell him what was good and what was not good, so he got him started on the whole breaks and beats dealing of yeah. And one story I had about him, like he was maybe two dealers down to my right. um he would always have a big wall of records that he would unveil like when the early bird people came in. And I one time like the dealers would get there and they could sort of go around and check out other dealers. And there was a guy right across from him and he had the Power of Zeus record and he had it priced at $10. And what I would have done was just handed the guy $10 and bought it. But John like said, "Oh, how about if I give you 8 for it?" And the guy goes, "All right, I'll take 8." So he takes it back to his spot, slaps $100 price tag on it, and then puts it up on the wall, like right across from the guy he just bought it from. And it was like, I would have kept that on the down low and like maybe, you know, I don't know. That was just something I noticed that day.
Were you and
And
John
then
friends?
we were acquaintances. Like I didn't really, like hang with him or, just from the record show, basically, I would talk to him a little bit.
Mm.
He would come by, look through the stuff, see what I had. But yeah, the dealers were also, there was like a competition, like everybody's trying to sell their stuff.
Mm.
My philosophy was always to try to not demand too excessive an amount for something. Like I would try to keep prices pretty reasonable compared to a lot of the dealers there. There was this one guy from Philadelphia. I think his name was OZ. Like every single show, that guy would bring in like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of records, and he'd price them so high he maybe sold like 3 or 4 records the whole day. It seemed, and it just seemed like why do you want to lug that stuff around, with you? I tried to be sort of streamlined, just bring 4 crates, hopefully sell them all, but usually about half would sell.
Mm. Wow, wow. Who were the other dealers that were at the Roosevelt Hotel Record Convention?
Well, like you mentioned, Soul Man Phil was like immediately to my left, so like, he was very cool. So the reason I got the name Boston Bob at the show was there was another dealer named Bob who was from New York, and he was Bob with the dreads, and I was Boston Bob, I guess, to keep the two Bobs, so who people were talking about. Um, let's see, who were some of the other dealers? Uh, I know like Supreme from Seattle started coming toward the end and would sell stuff. A lot of the guys I didn't really know their names. The Vinyl Dogs guys, like they put out some comps of beats and stuff. I think they were from New Jersey. They were sort of across from me and up a little bit. Um, but those were the main guys whose names I knew. And then there were a lot of guys that would come and go. You wouldn't see them. There was one guy, like, so most of the people there that I was dealing with they were looking for material, like, to use for making, raw material to make something new, like new music. So like they would listen and it was what was in the grooves that of course there were people looking for specific records because they knew what was on it, but there was this one customer who would show up at every show, and all he collected was sealed records, and he wouldn't buy anything that wasn't sealed, and he would never open them. So he had this big collection of sealed records, and it was like, well, that's just so weird because it's like all he wants is the object, like to hold the thing in his hand, like and have it and own it. And then the producers are just, they don't care what the record is as long as what's in the grooves is something they can transform into something new, and make something from it. So I always thought that was like the spectrum, like you had the pure object of the record sealed, and then you had like, it doesn't matter if the cover's beat up, or it's just like, what can I make from this piece of plastic with grooves in it.
Okay, okay. And who exactly were some of your influences coming up as a record collector? I forgot to ask you that question, by the way.
uh um so I guess like when I first started listening to music, it was more like in high school, it was just like what was on the radio, like you
Mhm,
have like the top 40 every week or something like that, and you hear all the different sorts of pop stuff. And
mhm,
then it was more like punk rock. And then I remember like being in college or something and being pretty high, and I was at a party, and I think it was like Marvin Gaye song came on, and somehow like that was just a transformative moment. Got to give it up,
mhm,
and from then on, I started listening to like James Brown, and looking into like more funk and soul stuff,
mhm.
and the Ultimate Breaks and Beats, of course, were a reference at that time. Started listening to that, um, and I don't know. So, and then I would just listen to started getting into like reggae and Latin and all sorts of. So, and then the digging, looking for beats. You just go through all the different genres, like um, like soundtracks and easy listening and jazz. Like everything became, you know, a place where you might find something. But I guess those were the main, like musical influences, like people who made music. Probably like James Brown is probably a well-known, like entry level sort of thing, I guess. But
Well, how does it feel to be a part of hip hop history? Because Large Professor's remix of Nas's "It Ain't Hard to Tell" song is a classic. It's gone on to become a bona fide hip hop classic, just as much of a classic as the original version. How does it feel to be a part of that history?
yeah, well, I guess I'm glad that it worked out that way. I don't know, probably he would have come across the record um, at some other point, but maybe it was just, like the thing about like selling the records is like there's so many records out there, like people would probably find them at some point. But I mean, I'm glad that that box that day that he was looking for something to use happened to be there. So, you know,
And you remember the day that you sold it to him, the Blue Jays record?
I don't exactly. I don't remember. Like, there was probably like 20 records in a box that I sent him, and just
Mhm.
stuff that I had found and I thought might be of interest. But, I don't really remember it that clearly. Like, but
Okay. And how did you link up with Egon Alapat's web store, Rap Cats?
oh, so at in the early 2000s, I had probably accumulated like maybe 30,000 records, like 45s, 12 inches, LPs all together. And my family was in a situation where we needed to raise some cash, and also it was just taking up so much space. The top floor was starting to sag a little bit. We had some children, so it seemed like a good idea to sell all the records. And then I ended up selling them to the Love and Hate guys, Michael McFadden in San
Philly.
Francisco. And then I believe he brought in Egon to manage the sale or to somehow oversee it. Or so what they would do is like pick, like batches of the records and have these pop-up sales and promote them. And um, like what I thought was a little weird is like, so not all the records were great or good. Every collection you have good stuff and you have some not so great stuff. So I think they would take the not so great stuff and put it in a bag, and like a grab bag, and say, this record, these records belong in this collection of Bob Gibson, which, I thought was a little like, it doesn't make them any better. That, you know what I mean? Like, so I guess it's like marketing. Like, I was never a good business person, like mailing people boxes of records and then waiting for them to pick out what they wanted and send you back what they didn't want with money was probably not the smartest way to do business, although no one ever didn't do it. So, it worked out okay.
Oh, okay. What are some
No
of
one
your
ever ripped me off, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So,
right. Now, what are some of your fondest memories of the Roosevelt Hotel Record conventions of the 1990s?
um, I guess just like doing like the whole process of, you know, digging for records, putting, taking the cream of like what you found between the last show, getting it all ready to go, driving like through the middle of the night down to New York, setting up. And then, every time like there was like a paranoia, like, oh, damn, what if I don't sell anything this time? Like nothing's going to sell, but, it always would. Um, and just like the sort of adrenaline, like the music, like learning about new records, finding new records. Yeah, it was just like I said. I wish I had documented that somehow.
Mm, okay. And I guess last but not least, what are you up to these days?
So I retired. I'm My daughter had a daughter. So we have a granddaughter who's just over a year old. So we're helping take care of her
Well,
a few
congratulations.
days a week.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I have accumulated, since I sold stuff, I've accumulated a few things. I did not sell my Christmas music, so every like December, I DJ, do some sets of like um, what I try to like my rationale is if you couldn't understand the words, like the music would be really good. So I try to do these Christmas music events, and then I also do a little bit of vinyl DJing here and there.
Mhm.
Um, there's a thing I did one on Martin Luther King Day on the 21st December. I mean, sorry, January 21st. There's a thing called Central on Air in Cambridge, which they have a lot of DJs, but they have a YouTube channel. So the most recent thing I did was on there was like an hour set of like different sort of African funk, soul, Latin, reggae-ish combination. Try to make a little journey through beginning to end. But
Interesting. Okay. And I guess last but not least, what advice would you give to any like record collectors or dealers coming up?
I guess like what I've seen now is like things are just so expensive compared to it used to be that there was no internet and you had to drive to every record store and dig, and each record store owner had to sort of decide what a price for a record was, because
Mm.
now you just go online and you find out how much everything is worth, so it's sort of seems tougher to me that for collecting records now, unless you're really really well off. I would say just collect what you love or what you can use or play out. Like if you're a DJ, you play it, or um, yeah, just love the music that you collect.
Okay, all right. So with that being said, on that note, Mr. Boston Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show on the Red Group Revolution to tell us your stories. I do believe that there should be like a documentary on the Roosevelt Hotel Record conventions of the 90s. It's long overdue. And you're definitely welcome to come back on the program anytime you want.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely reach out to well, I know on Instagram it's Venice Beach Freak Show is Todd Ray's Instagram, and I bet he's probably got some great stories about the Roosevelt as well.
Okay.
Um,
Sounds good. Sounds good.
yeah.
Well, once again, thank you so much. And like I said, you could come back anytime you want.
All right. Appreciate it all. Thank you so much.
Anytime, anytime. You have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.